There is no bullet that can be shot at him that somehow is not justified by the left saying, well, somehow it's Donald Trump's fault.
Well, look,
he's the one that said things in the past. They are going to try to kill him forever if y'all keep this up.
I will say this until I'm blue in the face. No one at this table has justified any violence against President Trump.
Abby,
and so I think that making those
generalizations,
with all due respect, making those kinds of generalizations only coarsens the dialogue that we're trying to have. And look, if your argument is that if your
criticizing Trump after he got shot at.
If your argument is that the totality of the circumstances are simply what is being said about Donald Trump.
Abby Phillip takes control and clearly challenges Ben Ferguson on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as tensions build around political violence, harsh messaging, and the growing divide in American politics, with Abby stepping in to keep the discussion on track while Ben Ferguson tries to hold his ground under pressure. And as the back and forth grows more intense, the focus shifts to the real effects of political speech, with mentions of Donald Trump adding extra weight and urgency to the conversation. So let's get into it and watch how Abby Phillip firmly shuts down Ben Ferguson on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
But it's not just rhetoric, it's actually policies. We have a president who likes conspicuous cruelty. We saw it in how ICE was operating on the streets. It is why he wants to bring back Alcatraz. It is why he wants to bring back firing squads. It is why he was delighted with his visit to Alligator Alcatraz. And in fact, when a reporter asked him before he traveled to Florida, what was the point to make sure that if they tried to get away, that they would be eaten by alligators? He says, we're going to teach them how to run. And they better not run in a straight line. They better run like this. That conspicuous cruelty and wanting to see that, and in his first administration saying that he wanted police officers to rough up people that they arrested before they even got into jail, got a trial, that lust for that is a whole other thing. We can't keep saying like, oh, it's just because people are talking. There are things that are happening that we are seeing, and that is a real thing, and that is contributing to a negative environment in this country.
Is it a both and? I mean, I think they're making the point. There is a lot of violence right now, but it is also true that President Trump is the most powerful megaphone, not to mention person, in this country, and he himself has a very long history of violent rhetoric.
Maximum warfare everywhere, all the time. That was said before and after the last person that just tried to kill Donald Trump. We're going to have more people try to kill Donald Trump if we don't stop. I just started talking about this.
You're okay.
I'm quoting Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democratic Party.
Let me actually play Hakeem Jeffries in context. Just listen to this.
Hakeem Jeffries just this month said, we are in an era of maximum warfare everywhere all the time.
Donald Trump and Republicans launched this gerrymandering war. We are in an era of maximum warfare everywhere, all the time. And we're going to keep the pressure on Republicans in every single state in the union to ensure at the end of the day that there is a fair national map.
Governor Josh Shapiro said heads need to roll within the administration.
People have been disappeared in the community. American civil rights have been violated. None of this is acceptable. Heads do need to roll, certainly within the administration.
So the reason I stopped you is because there's a difference between using an idiom and a figure of speech and calling for violence. Any person who understands the English language knows that. And I think that is true of that quote that you just read of Hakeem Jeffries and the one that you heard from Josh Shapiro.
It is difficult to overlook how deeply a leader's tone influences the kind of environment people respond to, because over time it becomes clear that political rhetoric does not exist on its own and is often supported by policy decisions and public actions. And research from organizations like the FBI shows that increases in politically driven violence often happen during periods of strong division and intense messaging from well-known figures. which does not place all blame on one side, but does highlight that the language leaders use carries real impact beyond simple headlines. And there is an important difference between figurative political talk and direct approval of harsh treatment, as experts in political communication often explain that language connected to punishment or dehumanization can slowly make aggressive behavior seem more acceptable. And even the American Psychological Association has warned that constant exposure to aggressive rhetoric from authority figures can reduce sensitivity in audiences and increase their acceptance of hostility. And when this kind of messaging is combined with policies that appear deliberately strict or punishing, it creates a cycle where words and actions strengthen each other and push tensions even higher. And history shows this pattern is not new, because during times of deep division like the Civil Rights Movement, leaders who used more extreme language often increased unrest instead of bringing stability. So the key takeaway is that words, tone, and policy direction are closely linked. And when they lean toward confrontation instead of restraint, the effects move beyond politics and begin to influence how people behave and react in daily life, which is where things can start to become unpredictable.
There will be more attacks, and there'll be more conservatives that will be killed if the Democratic Party doesn't wake up and realize that words have meaning and they light the fuse. It has happened to too many people, including Charlie Kirk, a friend of mine. You can't sit here and have Joe Biden say that Donald Trump, quote, is a clear and present danger to democracy, and then have surrogates back there.
True?
I mean,
But he is.
The American people don't believe that. They elected him again.
Do you believe it?
I don't believe he's a clear and present danger to this country. I think he's a
I
savior
absolutely
for this
do.
country.
I absolutely
I
do.
believe that you do.
And I believe that
But
a
I
lot
think-
of Americans do,
but
too.
I think-
and calling something what it is not an incitement to violence.
It is for the people trying to kill Donald Trump.
No.
In the manifesto, it said that is why they were trying to kill Donald Trump. Read their words and their manifestos. They will tell you it is because of what you're saying.
It is a very easy thing for me to say that a violent person behaving violently is wrong. It is a very easy
But
thing.
I'll give them the- I'll light the
I'm sorry,
fuse.
I'll finish. And it is a very easy thing for me to say that political violence does not belong in our politics, and it is a sign.
light
It is
the
a
fuse.
sign. It is a sign of an unhealthy democracy. But I will never take lessons in civility from this president and this White House when they have engaged
So
in the
therefore,
in the
light
very
the
same,
fuse, and
in the
it's
very
justifiable
same
to
thing.
attack and try to kill the president.
And conservatives did not want to connect Donald Trump's rhetoric to Charlottesville. They did not.
No, it was
Southern
Poverty Law Center that paid for that violence. By the way, we learned that last week. Yeah, I agree with you. That was Southern Poverty Law Center.
They did not want to connect him to January 6th and his rhetoric and all the things that he said around January 6th to that violence. They did not get upset with him when he pardoned all of the January 6th rioters. They did not.
Therefore, it is justifiable in America to go kill the president of the United States of America.
What I'm trying to
That's
say,
what you're
that you
saying.
to understand is that hypocrisy does not feel good to Americans, and they
Hold on.
reject it.
I go back to court
Let me
here.
just say, Ben, nobody here has justified the attempts against President Trump's life or anybody's life.
There's new polling data that's out that say that there's about 20% of young Democrats in this country that think political violence is acceptable. Could that be because we have normalized demonizing the sitting president of the United States of America and calling him Adolf Hitler, or saying he's a threat to democracy, or saying that he's an evil man,
J.D.
or
Vance
saying
called him Adolf Hitler.
Again, I go back. Did he take it back?
Yes,
And
he
guess
got
what?
something
He
out of
realized,
it.
oh wait,
He
the
got
guy's not
something out
Adolf
of it.
Hitler,
He got
and
something
I
out of
actually
it.
like him. He
If
works for them.
I would have had a payoff out of it, I would take
Abby,
it back
this
too.
is why they will never
Exactly.
stop trying to kill Donald Trump, because there is no bullet that can be shot at him that somehow is not justified by the left saying, well, somehow it's Donald Trump's fault.
Well, look,
he's the one that said
I'll
things in the
say
past
this.
and sent him
I'll say
to
this
tweet.
until
They
I'm
are
blue in
going
the
to
face.
try to kill him
Hold on.
forever if y'all
I
keep
will
this
say
up.
this until I'm blue in the face. No one at this table
Nobody.
has justified
all these
any
jokes behind it
violence
don't
against
mean
President
anything.
Trump.
Abby,
and so I think that
with all
making
due
those
respect-
generalizations, no, with all due respect, making those kinds of generalizations only coarsens the dialogue that we're trying to have. And look, if your argument
The
is
entire
that
table
if
has
your
been
hold
criticizing
on,
Trump
hold on.
after he got
if
shot
your
at.
argument is that the totality of the circumstances are simply what is being said about Donald Trump, that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, whatever. Let me just play this. This is Caroline Levitt. She's accusing Democrats of what you're accusing them of, and then listen to the rest of this.
When you really step back and look at it, it starts to feel like this discussion is missing a much larger pattern that has been building over the years. Because political violence does not come from just one side using harsh words. It develops in environments where trust in institutions is already breaking down. And data from the Pew Research Center shows that political division and distrust in government are at some of the highest levels seen in decades. And that kind of climate makes people more open to extreme interpretations of events, no matter what their ideology. And there is also strong evidence showing that the tone set by leaders matters far more than isolated comments from politicians. Because when influential figures keep framing opponents as enemies or threats, it changes how their supporters see and understand reality. And researchers connected to the American Political Science Association have found that constant exposure to us versus them messaging increases the chances that people begin to justify aggressive or even violent behavior, which is not about blaming one party, but about the combined effect of rhetoric, policy, and media amplification all feeding into the same cycle. And if you look at major flashpoints like the January 6th United States Capitol attack, it shows how quickly things can spiral when political narratives and real-world actions collide. Because that moment did not just appear suddenly, but was built over time through repeated messaging, growing distrust, and constant escalation. So focusing only on who said what recently misses the bigger issue, as the real concern is the overall climate, where everything is framed as a fight for survival. And that is what keeps pushing situations closer to the edge.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, President Trump is making the country look like a, quote, fascist state. Senator Adam Schiff saying President Trump using a dictator playbook. Senator Ed Markey calling President Trump a dictator, saying that this administration's actions are authoritarianism on steroids.
We're living in a fascist state. It all comes out of the White House. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country. There's a radical left Marxist, communist, fascist. She's a Marxist. She's a fascist. Comrade Kamala Harris.
So look, the point is that it's not that Donald Trump is responsible for violence against those people. The point is that it's not enough to explain the moment that we are in. It's just, did he call her a fascist? Did she call him a fascist? Because that is happening on both sides of the debate. There is more that is contributing to where we are as a country, and it is bad. It is unquestionably bad. And if we fail to actually address the root causes, we are going nowhere.
I would say this. So if we want to bring the country together, since Donald Trump was actually shot, has he toned down his rhetoric or has he raised the rhetoric?
It has been.
It is definitely toned down from 2016 to 2020.
It has been 48 hours.
No, I said the first time when he was shot in the ear. Has his rhetoric gone up or down?
All right.
I agree with you. In 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, he was way more in your face. You look at a guy that was shot at again the other night, and he went much calmer.
Look,
much calmer. And yet you still say, well, this is somehow Donald Trump's fault.
We have more on this topic because there's more on this topic. But to answer your question, has Donald Trump's behavior changed?
What should you say the other night differently?
This is to Juliet's point. It's not any one particular moment. It is the totality of circumstances.
Maybe if we could just sort of switch the conversation, just look going forward. And does anyone at this table believe that Trump can lead, because he is the leader of the United States, towards a less violent rhetoric?
It feels like this conversation keeps coming back to the idea that both sides use harsh language, but that misses a deeper reality about power and reach. Because not all rhetoric has the same impact depending on who it comes from. And when a message is delivered by someone with one of the biggest platforms in the country, it carries far more influence and reaches a much larger audience. And research from the Brookings Institution shows that repeated messaging from top-level leaders can shape how the public thinks far more than statements from individual lawmakers, especially when it is echoed daily across media networks. And there is also a clear pattern where words and policy begin to reinforce each other over time, as it is not just about labels like fascist or communist, but about whether actions match that stronger tone. And analysts from Freedom House have pointed out that democratic decline often starts slowly, with leaders making aggressive language feel normal while also pushing policies that test the limits of institutions. And that mix creates confusion for the public and makes it harder to tell the difference between fair criticism and exaggeration, which only deepens division. And history shows that moments of high political tension often follow this same path. Because if you look at events like the Watergate scandal, public trust did not collapse all at once, but slowly wore down through repeated clashes between leadership messaging and government actions. So focusing only on whether the tone has softened recently does not really answer the bigger question, as the real issue is whether the overall direction is calming tensions or continuing a pattern that keeps people on edge, because that is what ultimately shapes how the country moves forward.